will drip off your face. You will stop and start on your precarious journey, but you will get to the top. You've managed to climb.
155
steps. You've shown us we need to just try. You have headed into puberty with us barely noticing. Greg has begun to shave you at the end of your bath time. I take over afterwards and admire your fresh face. I rub your hair and help you transfer out of the bath into a wheelchair covered in towels. I help you onto your bed to get you dressed. Roll deodorant under your armpits. Your jaw has become strong and people have begun to comment on what a handsome young man you are. Your hair has darkened to brown, and when Daphne, your hairdresser, cuts it one day, you look like a young Liam Gallagher. You have the look of a musician about you, which, of course, you are.
That's a large bag of rice.
I'm sorry? Oh, no, is he going to be useless? My hopeful heart sinks. This is the 5th social worker in the last 8 months. They keep leaving.
There are apples on that tree.
I find these meetings exhausting. Can we talk about Louis and his needs? I'm worried, really worried about him turning 18 in 2 weeks' time. What's going to happen to the respite?
Oh, yes. Well, the respite will finish. There's nothing for adults.
What? Nothing at all?
No. There used to be, but it's been cut.
His face is pale. He seems nervous. The way he's clicking his pen. So how do adult services work? He's shrugging.
I don't know the answer to that. You'll be seen again by an adult services worker. I've got to write a report on you now. Sign you over. You should have been seen by the transition social worker if she's been off sick for the last 6 months. We're a bit behind.
So where does that leave us now?
Is that a saxophone you've got there?
Oh, bloody hell. I never thought this day would be possible. I thought I would care for you for the rest of my life. But then what? What would happen to you? That is what has given me sleepless nights, urged me to start to try to get something in place, in case. And today you are leaving. You're nearly 20, and you've been offered a place at a special needs residential college with 24-hour care. You will live there in term times for 3 years, if it works. We heard 4 weeks ago we'd secured the funding thanks to Welsh Government and your local council. We've been fighting for you to get this for years. You are going to learn independent skills at college. We are packed into 2 cars. Greg has your wheelchair and bulky equipment, and I have your walking frame and you.
Have you got my nightlight?
Yes, Lou.
And my guitar tuner?
Yes, got that.
A microphone?
Yes, but hopefully you might not need that. Hopefully you'll have an ensuite bathroom and can wheel yourself to the toilet at night.
And my water bottle?
Yes, got that. I've got everything on the list.
And my headphones?
We've made it.
Look at this, Louis. College.
Here, give me your mask, Lou.
And your hands. That's it.
You're holding Greg's hand and balancing awkwardly. I watch you reach out for your K-walker and grab onto its handles. Turn around and face outwards. You straighten, lift your head up and then look down at your feet. And with a strength you've mastered through just trying, you begin to walk rapidly towards the college entrance door. Hey! Wait for us, Louis! I'm laughing. I'm laughing out loud, watching you walking away from me. Oh, my face has flushed hot. I'm blinking back tears, but they won't stay in. I'm looking at Greg.
Oh, no.
You are going. You were going away. Will it work? Will you be safe? Will you be okay? Will I be able to bear this hole you will leave in my day, every day? Oh, Greg looks like he's struggling too.
Will you miss us, Louis?
Yes.
I'm going to miss you. You look different. What is it? There's anticipation there in your face. You look at me calmly and surprise me again.
It's all a part of growing up.
That was beautiful. Take my favourite tune.
This is my mum, Alison. I can't wait to go on the radio. I had to say a massive goodbye.
That's lovely. A massive goodbye to who's listening on the radio.
Yes.
Well, that was fantastic. The final part of our dramatisation of Alison White's memoir, Letter to Louis, with the real Alison and the real Louis. And if you want to hear more from Alison, she was on Woman's Hour on Wednesday. So get the podcast of Wednesday's Woman's Hour via BBC Sounds. We're back with the highlights of the Woman's Hour week tomorrow afternoon, just after 4 o'clock with your afternoon cuppa. But we will be repeating The Laughing Babies. And actually, just because in the spirit of generally trying to cheer people up, here's a bit more of Charlie with the fantastic baby giggle. Here we go. Join us again tomorrow afternoon at 4 and then live on Monday, 10 minutes.
Brilliant. Woman's Hour was presented by Jane Garvey and produced by Sarah Crawley. The studio engineer was Emma Hart. And in Letter to Louis, you may be interested to know that the piano music, J.S. Bach's Prelude in C major, that served as the theme to the drama, was performed by Louis White. In the drama, Alison was played by Katie West, Louis by Zach Ford-Williams, and Greg by Rupert Hill. David was Jason Doan. Dr. Thompson was Jonathan Keeble. The nurse Natalie was Natalie Grady, and the occupational therapist was Verity Henry. All other parts were played by the company. The real voices of Alison White, Louis White, and the music therapist Brian Smith also featured. Letter to Louis was written by Alison White and was a BBC Radio Drama North production directed by Nadia Molinari.
What's with the elbow?
Don't know.
Seen a doctor about it?
Like we can afford a doctor.
Medical ethics before the NHS.
Take this. Down to the chemist on Edwards Drive. Tell him Dr. Denny sent you and he'll take care of the money next time he's in.
A.J. Cronin's groundbreaking novel, set in a Welsh mining town.
How can you do this without a nurse assisting you? It's not enough for me to believe in myself. I need you to believe in me too.
The Citadel, on BBC Radio 4.
You're an extraordinary fellow, Philip. Oh, I'll ask someone who agrees with me.
Next Monday to Friday morning at 10:45.
After the news, we imagine a world without school as we know it, the future of education.
BBC News at 11 o'clock. The head of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has criticised what he's called the lack of international cooperation in fighting coronavirus. In comments that appear to be an attack on the United States and China, Mr. Guterres also singled out the world's strongest nations for what he called a failure to combine power and leadership. Mr. Guterres told the BBC that has created unnecessary global fragility and dysfunction.
Unfortunately, what is true is that the world was not able to come together and to face COVID-19 in a articulated, coordinated way. Each country went with its own policy, different countries with different perspectives, different strategies, and this has allowed the virus to spread
The government is expressing optimism that it will have met its self-imposed deadline for reaching 100,000 daily coronavirus tests. The deadline expired yesterday, but the data showing whether the target was met will only be available later today. The Secretary of State for Housing, Robert Jenrick, said it would be a big step forward, but much more needed to be done.
This is only a stepping stone in itself. We obviously need to go further. This isn't the limit of our ambitions. But we have now built the foundations of the network that we need to build upon with track and trace. And so I think this is a significant achievement.
The Royal College of Midwives has warned high-risk pregnancies may be going undetected, leading to a potential rise in stillbirths and neonatal deaths. The college's chief executive, Jill Walton, said some women were worried about presenting to maternity services during the pandemic, even though those services remained open. The Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, says an improvement in the country's coronavirus numbers means the government will bring forward the point at which it will consider easing lockdown measures to next week. Mr. Morrison said opening up the economy would depend on millions more people downloading a smartphone app that would allow thorough contact tracing. But he told MPs the progress the country had made meant the timetable for easing the restrictions could now be reconsidered.
Today, the National Cabinet agreed to bring forward our consideration of the decision on relaxing restrictions to next Friday. Australians have earned an early mark through the work that they have done, and that decision will now be made on next Friday.
Ryanair says it will take many months to refund its customers for cancelled flights. The airline says it normally processes 10,000 refunds a month, but is now facing a backlog of 25 million for March, April and May. More than 84,000 scouts from across the world set a new record by all camping last night in their gardens and homes. The event, organised by Northumberland Scouts, was joined by children from 67 countries, including Malawi, Oman and Hong Kong. BBC News.
Now on BBC Radio 4, the final part of Alex Beard's series on the future of education. Over the past fortnight, the former teacher has been setting out his vision for a global education system fit for the future. So far, he's explored knowing and teaching. Today, he's ready to talk about who this education system will serve, the learners. Here he is now with The Learning Revolution.
Hi, Alex Beard again. I'm here to present the final part of my pitch for the future of global education. Yeah, so over the past couple of weeks, some of the biggest thinkers in philosophy, science, psychology and education have been helping me to imagine an education system of the future based on what we now know about humanity, the world and our place in it. So yeah, it's pretty ambitious. So far we've covered knowing and teaching. Knowing will be enhanced by our own personal AI assistants. Factual know-that knowledge will help us to develop know-how, the skills. We'll know ourselves, our relationships to others and to the environment. And teaching will be everywhere. Expert instructors will help us with foundational knowledge. Coaches will guide and stretch us. New technologies will support this teaching. And today is the last piece of the puzzle, learning. It's something that we all need to be good at. Well, because our future's unpredictable, with changes to the climate and advances in AI, we're all going to need to adapt throughout our lives. So today is all about the future of learning. Yeah? Okay, we've got a lifetime of ideas to get through. I'll begin. Throughout this series, we've been joined by a young learner born in the year 2100 who has her own personal AI assistant that accompanies her throughout her education. Now imagine that the year is 2175. Our young learner has become a grandmother. Her baby granddaughter lies in her lap. Between them is a lifetime of knowledge, growth and change. The baby babbles away happily.
So you start out with a brain that's not very efficient or effective, but very good at learning, very plastic, very good at changing in response to the information in the environment.
Meanwhile, at our learner's age,
memory tends to deteriorate, verbal fluency, psychomotor speed, and in contrast, vocabulary masteries, those we preserve or even improve as we get older.
she is still mentally dexterous. She's actively learning.
The more we learn, the more we read, the more we discuss with people and learn things from one another. All those aspects are making our brain stronger and to be a lower risk of dementia.
And in the years ahead of her, it's likely that she'll meet another generation of her family, perhaps even two.
With the advances in medicine, it's likely that we'll have longer lives, which, coupled with the accelerating pace of change, means that we will have to keep learning and keep reinventing ourselves.
And that means that we absolutely have to move beyond any notion that it's just something that happens in the first 20 years of our life, and it's very much dictated by our age.
Today, we learn in our childhood. We leave education behind when we enter the world of work, then raise a family, look forward to some time off. But in the future, our attitude to learning could be very different. We'll live longer, see our jobs automated, and experience climate change on an enormous scale. What would that mean for our education system of the future? This is Yuval Noah Harari, historian and author of the best-selling books Sapiens and Homo Deus.
The 60-year-old grandmother and the 8-year-old kid, they have things they can help each other and teach each other. So, you go to a hunter-gatherer community, going together to the wood to look for mushrooms, and they have different skills. Then maybe the 8-year-old kid can climb a tree much better than the 60-year-old grandmother, but she has much more experience in telling the difference between a poisoned mushroom and a mushroom that looks almost exactly the same but can actually heal you. It's a medicinal mushroom.
Learning is intergenerational. What if, in the future, older generations were an integral part of children's learning, not playing the role of teacher, but as a channel of memory, wisdom, and care?
You would just have grandmoms and grandpops sitting in the school, maybe not telling you, a specific thing about how to read or write, but telling you about what it was like 100 years ago.
Alison Gopnik is a developmental psychologist at the University of California, Berkeley.
Having a kind of grandmother corps of older people with wisdom who could spend time with the younger people in a school might be a practical thing that would make a big difference both for the older people and the younger people.
The social interaction with children has benefits for the brain health of older people too. This is Dorina Kader. She's a neuropsychologist specializing in dementia and cognitive decline.
We believe that social interaction and social support requires individuals to engage areas of the brain which are related to also memory, to attention, to mental processes that are used in so many cognitive and social tasks.
This type of interaction also provides powerful lessons in understanding ourselves. Catherine Mannix is a palliative care specialist. She believes we all need to be more comfortable with our mortality.
There are developmental stages during childhood where gradually children begin to understand that a thing can be alive and a thing can be dead. So they don't have any emotional baggage attached with the idea of being dead. It's just a really interesting thing. So eventually they have a coupling of emotions and the facts of dying together in their brains, and that means it's really important to be curious about their curiosity with them and to give them the answers to the questions they're asking as they gradually build themselves the steps into understanding it better.
Spending time with a variety of people near the end of their lives could help demystify death for younger people, and fostering that healthy approach to dying will improve their own end-of-life experiences when that time comes. But intergenerational learning isn't a one-way process of knowledge being handed down from above. Young people have much to teach us, especially about how to learn. Alison Gopnik refers to babies as the scientists in the crib.
They make up hypotheses, they test them, they do experiments. When babies are babbling, for example, they really seem to be experimenting. They're using the sounds of the language, using the relationship between the way their tongue and mouth works and what comes out as a way of trying to figure out how the language system works.
Young children are naturally curious and they experiment through play. But as we age, we can forget how to do it. Mitch Resnick is a professor of learning research at the MIT Media Lab.
If you think of the traditional kindergarten, you might think of children coming in, creating a fanciful city, and they're putting blocks together to build castles and start making stories about the people who live in this castle and the fantasy village. Of course, when they stack blocks together, they learn about stability and structure. But even more important, they're learning about the creative process, how to take an idea and turn it into a meaningful project with others.
Faced with a future where creativity will be more important than ever, we'll need to nurture that playfulness. To do so might mean breaking down some barriers.
There's a barrier between disciplines. Similarly, schools are segregated by age, but we've seen that people of all ages learn best working together with many others. People with more experience can benefit by working with people with less, by helping share their experience. There are also boundaries of time. And if you're working on a project, if you have to shut down in an hour, you're not going to make the type of progress or get engaged in the way that's most important.
Creativity depends on playfulness, freedom, and interaction. It makes sense for some learning to happen within age groups, but working on projects with children of different ages is also important. In that setting, young learners benefit from the ideas and help of others, and they gain experience in giving care. Alison Gopnik again.
So if you think about most of human history, by the time you had children yourself, you had had extensive experience with taking care of children and looking after your little brothers and sisters and siblings and cousins. And one of the things that happens now is that children don't have any experience of that in school. In fact, they're not even in the same room with younger and older children. And then when they have kids, when they're 30, there's this kind of crisis of anxiety and worry because they really aren't competent at those kinds of skills.
In the future, we'll understand that the essence of learning in our youth will be to nurture our playfulness and grow our capacity for care. But learning doesn't solely depend on these innate capabilities. As we heard in the previous episodes, learning also means mastering the operating system of language and numbers that allows us to plug into our culture. We learn this type of know-that knowledge through instruction from teachers, but also online. And as many of us will have found out in the last few weeks, it requires motivation. BJ Fogg is a psychologist. He directs the Stanford University Persuasive Technology Lab.
Behavior happens when three things come together at the same moment. Number one, motivation. Number two, there's ability to do the behavior. And the third is that there needs to be a prompt. And the prompt is whatever reminds you or cues you to the behavior. When a behavior doesn't happen, you're missing one of those components.
New technologies could play a role in helping get those three things in place. Rose Luckin is an expert in learning and AI.
There are various different types of trackers that we can use to see how many steps we've done. Well, let's have that for our intelligence. And I think something like a Fitbit for the mind could be motivating as well as very effective. The Fitbit would take data about our bodies, from where we're looking, for how much we're fidgeting, and in addition would be analysing the activity that we're completing. Are we making progress with the task that we're trying to complete? And pulling that all together to help us see, are we paying attention? And if we're not, suggesting ways in which we might pay attention better.
Like exercise, some learning is also hard work. It requires focus, which requires motivation.
There are 3 core motivators.
BJ Fogg again.
One is what you feel in that moment. If you're feeling pleasure, you want to keep doing it. If you're feeling pain, you'll want to stop. The next motivator is something that you anticipate. And one is an anticipation of something good, that's hope, or the anticipation of something bad, that's fear. The third is a social one, and one's about social acceptance, and the flip side is social rejection. And we're deeply wired as human beings to be social creatures, so the social motivation is very powerful.
A Fitbit of the mind could ensure we receive that prompt to practice our Mandarin tones, pitched exactly at our ability level, at precisely the moment our motivation is highest. And it knows